Chapter 5, Part 1, The Legislative Branch. Please write down the first two bullets on this slide. The National Legislature. The legislative branch is led by Congress. They are our lawmaking branch of government. The Constitution established a bicameral legislature, that is, one made up of two houses. Please write down the information colored in red on this slide. Sessions. The 116th Congress is currently in session. Each term of Congress begins on January 3rd of odd-numbered years. Each term has 2 years. There are 2 sessions in each congressional term. A session of Congress lasts about 1 year. Minnesota has 10 members in Congress, 8 House members, and 2 U.S. Senators. The U.S. House of Representatives. There are 100 U.S. Senators and 435 members in the U.S. House of Representatives. Please write down all of the information on this slide. Size of the House of Representatives. There are 435 voting members of the U.S. House of Representatives. That number is set by the Constitution and states that seats shall be apportioned or distributed based on the population of their state. This is the main criteria that determines how many representatives each state will receive. Census. A census is a population count taken every 10 years in the United States. It usually is taken at the beginning of each decade. Each state gets at least 1 seat in the House of Representatives. Gerrymander. Gerrymander is a technique used to divide a state into congressional districts that will favor one party over another. Census Bureau. The Census Bureau determines the number of seats each state shall have after a census is taken. Please write down all of the information on this slide. Qualifications and terms of U.S. House members. In order to be a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, you need to have the following qualifications met. You need to be at least 25 years of age. You need to have been a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years. And you must have been an inhabitant of the state in which you are seeking to be elected. A House member's term lasts 2 years. There are no term limits. In other words, they can be elected as many times as the people in their district votes for them. On this slide, please write down the information written or typed in red. The U.S. House leadership. The majority party in both the House of Representatives and the Senate is the party to which more than half of the members belong. The minority party is the other party with less than half of the members. The Speaker of the House currently is Nancy Pelosi, and she's a Democrat from California. The Speaker of the House is the most powerful member in the U.S. House of Representatives and typically comes from the majority party. On this slide, we have all of the current members of Minnesota's delegation to the U.S. House of Representatives. Angie Craig represents U.S. Congressional District Number 2 here in Minnesota. She was just reelected for another term in office this past November. The United States Senate. Please write down the first bullet on this slide. Size and elections. The U.S. Senate has 2 senators from each state. Members of the Senate represent entire states, thus they represent a larger, more diverse population with a broad range of interest. After the 17th Amendment, senators have been picked directly by the voters in each state. Only one senator is elected from a state in any given election, except when the other seat has been vacated because of a death, expulsion, or resignation. Please write down all of the information on this slide for U.S. senators. Qualifications and term. What are the constitutional qualifications for a U.S. senator? They are: you need to be at least 30 years of age. You need to have been a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years. And you need to be an inhabitant or resident of the state in which you seek election. Terms. Senators serve 6-year terms. There are no term limits. Only 1/3 of the U.S. Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. This slide provides information about the Senate leadership. The President of the Senate is the Vice President. The most powerful figure in the Senate is the Majority Leader. Please write down the bullet for the Vice President, the President pro tempore, and the Majority Leader. The U.S. Senate leadership. According to the Constitution, the Vice President is the leader and President of the Senate. The President pro tempore handles the day-to-day leadership of the Senate and is usually from the majority party. This role typically goes to the most senior member of the majority party. The Majority Leader. The floor leader for the majority party is the real leader and the most powerful person in the Senate. Here are Minnesota's current U.S. senators: Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, both Democrats. The members of Congress. A look at the 116th Congress. The job. Members of Congress play 5 major roles: legislators, representatives of the people, committee members, servants to their constituents, and politicians. As legislators, they are responsible for making laws. It's the most important responsibility they have in Congress. Representatives of the people, they vote on proposed bills, and they must take this very seriously. It's an important task. Senators and representatives are elected to represent the people, and there are 4 options they have when casting votes. They are representatives of the people. They act as trustees. They must use independent judgment and their own conscience. They should look at each question closely and decide on their merits. They are delegates. They are agents of those who elected them, and you vote the way the folks at home would want you to. They are partisans. They must work with their party to determine what works best for their party in certain situations. They are also politicos, right? They are politicians. They have to combine their role as trustees, delegates, and partisans and make the best decision available. A lot of the work in Congress is done in committees. There are 3 types of committees we're going to talk about. First, standing committees. Standing committees are permanent committees, meaning that they are always in session during each term. Some examples are agriculture, appropriations, education and labor, finance, and judiciary. Next, select committees. Select committees are temporary committees that meet for a limited time until their tasks are complete. Once the tasks are completed, the committees disband. Third, joint committees. These committees are formed when members of both houses join to consider specific issues. Please write down the second bullet on this slide, seniority system. Committee members. Proposed laws, bills are referred to committees in each chamber, and senators and members of the House screen these proposals. Seniority system. The system used in both houses of Congress gives the most desirable committee assignments to the longest serving members. The majority party. Members who have been in Congress for many years will most likely get the committee of their choice. Please write down the word constituent and the definition next to it. Servants to constituents. A constituent is a person from a representative's district. They, or their staff aides, try to help people who have various problems with the federal bureaucracy, whether it's issues dealing with Social Security, passport applications, and a host of other problems that may arise with government issues. Senators and representatives are paid a salary of $174,000 per year. Please write down the term franking privilege and the definition next to it at the bottom of this slide. There are a lot of non-salary benefits that members of Congress receive. Each member receives a number of fringe benefits, some of which are quite substantial. Travel and office allowances. Travel between home and office is free for members of Congress. They also have office space in Washington, D.C. and in their home district. They have good medical plans and pensions for retirement. And they also have a privilege known as franking privilege. And it allows them to mail letters and other materials that are work-related for free. Benefits continued. Congressmen and women are granted immunity, which are legal protections in certain situations to allow them to do their jobs without interference from outsiders. They get personal staff who help them gather information for bills, write speeches, deal with constituents, and lobbyists. They also have committee and support staff, access to the Library of Congress, Congressional Research Services, etc. Lobbyists. Lobbyists are people hired by private groups to influence government decision makers. Congressmen and women also perform 3 other jobs. And these are the main jobs that they are sent to Washington to do. Number 1, lawmaking. We talked about that one earlier. Number 2, casework. They help people from their home state or district in dealing with the federal government. 3, they help their district or state. They help to get funding, aid for their states, money for hospitals, post offices, transit, environment, and military bases. These are also known in some situations as pork barrel projects, government projects and grants that primarily benefit the home district or state. The powers of Congress. Please write down express powers and the definition next to it. Please write down the information underneath it, from borrowing power to the naturalization process. And then finally, write down the House of Representatives start all bills that raise money. Express powers. Powers that Congress has specifically listed in the Constitution. Some of those powers are: they have the ability to borrow money, coin or make money, levy taxes, declare war, and establish the rules within the naturalization process. The House of Representatives start all bills that raise money. There are 2 types. There are appropriation bills, and then there are authorization bills. Please write down the first 3 items on this slide and all of the information highlighted in red. Implied powers. Implied powers are powers not specifically listed in the Constitution. They are highlighted in what's called the necessary and proper clause. The necessary and proper clause is also known as the elastic clause. It allows Congress to stretch its powers to meet new demands. Draft qualifications, quota or quotas for immigrants, establishing military academies are some examples of implied powers. Limits on congressional powers. Writ of habeas corpus, bills of attainder, ex post facto laws are some examples of things that limit the power of Congress. Congress has war powers. Congress has the power to declare war and deal with national defense. And these powers are shared with the president. Congress has the ability to propose constitutional amendments. They can propose a constitutional amendment with a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress. Congress can also call a national convention of delegates from each of the states to propose amendments. This part has never been done. Congress also has electoral college duties. The House of Representatives may be called on to elect a president. If neither candidate for the presidency receives 270 electoral votes, the House of Representatives will be called on to help choose the next president. This has happened two times, Thomas Jefferson in 1801 and John Quincy Adams in 1824. Electoral duties continued. The 25th Amendment provides for the filling of a vacancy in the vice president. The president nominates a successor, replacement, and the nominee is subject to a majority vote in both houses of Congress. This has happened several times. Gerald Ford and Nelson Rockefeller became vice president this way. Please write down the third bullet highlighted in red on this slide. Congress also has impeachment powers. The president, vice president, and other high officials may be removed from office on impeachment for conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Impeach means to accuse or bring charges against. The impeachment process starts in the U.S. House of Representatives. With impeachment, the U.S. House has the power to bring the charges with majority vote. The U.S. Senate serves as the jury and they try the case. You need a 2/3 vote in the Senate for conviction. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides over the case. Presidents Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump were all impeached by the U.S. House of Representatives during their terms in office. None of them were removed from the office of the presidency. Richard Nixon resigned as the process got underway during his presidency. Please write down all of the information highlighted in red on this slide. Executive powers. All major appointments, cabinet, federal judges, made by the president must be confirmed or approved by the Senate by a majority vote. More executive powers for Congress. The Senate may accept or reject a treaty as it stands, or it may decide to offer amendments. For example, the Treaty of Versailles, World War I, was rejected by the U.S. Senate. And that treaty was created to help settle the terms of World War I. Congress also has investigatory powers as well. Congress has the power to investigate any matter that falls within the scope of its legislative powers. Some examples of things they've investigated: organized crime, 9/11 investigation, and steroids in professional sports. How a bill becomes a law. Please write down the last bullet on this slide. How a bill becomes a law. Private bills. Private bills concern individual people or groups. Public bills apply to the entire nation and involve general matters like taxation, civil rights, or terrorism. More than 10,000 bills are introduced each term of Congress. Only a few hundred actually become law. Ideas for bills come from members of Congress, citizens, and the White House. Only the House and Senate members may introduce bills in Congress where it is given a title and a number and sent to the appropriate standing committee. Please write down the term pigeonhole and the information in bullet number 4. From bill to law. Once a bill is introduced by a House or Senate member in their respective chamber, the bill is sent to the appropriate standing committee. When the standing committee gets the bill, they have several options they can pursue. First, they can pass the bill without changing it. Second, they can make some changes and suggest that the bill be passed. Third, they can replace the bill with an alternative bill dealing with the same information. 4, they can pigeonhole the bill, which means setting it aside and ignoring it and letting it die. Or 5, they can kill the bill by majority vote after researching it. Please write down the last 2 bullets on this slide. When bills reach the floor of the full Senate and the full House, members debate the pros and cons of the bill. The House accepts only relevant amendments. The Senate allows riders, which are completely unrelated amendments, to be tacked on to a bill. The House has time limits for debate and discussion as they have 435 members. The Senate allows filibusters. A filibuster occurs when a senator attempts to talk a bill to death. No time limit, and they try to kill the bill during debate. In order to end a filibuster, Senate members must come up with a cloture. In other words, they need a 3/5 vote of all of their members, which is around 60 votes, to end a filibuster. Please write down the 3 bullets highlighted in red on this slide. A simple majority of all members that are present is needed to pass a bill in both houses of Congress. Both houses must pass an identical bill. A conference committee is formed to work out differences between bills. So, for example, if the Senate passes one version of a bill and the House passes a different version of a bill, the conference committee would have members from the House and the Senate meet, work together to create the same language for both the House and the Senate to vote on. After a bill passes both houses, it goes to the president. The president may sign it into law. The president may veto it, which means to reject it, or the president may do nothing for 10 days. If Congress is in session, the bill becomes a law if the president doesn't sign it in 10 days. If Congress is not in session, the bill dies, and this is called a pocket veto. Please write down all of the information on this slide. And for the review part, please make sure all 6 steps are written exactly as you see it. You will need to put these in order on the test. If the president vetoes a bill, it can be passed if 2/3 of the members of each House vote to override the veto. Review. This is a shorter, condensed version of how a bill becomes a law. And I wanted you to write this series of steps as opposed to all of the other information on the previous slides. Review. First, an idea is given to a senator or representative. 2, it is introduced or announced to Congress. 3, it is delivered to a standing committee. 4, it is debated on the floor of the House or Senate. 5, if different versions of a bill exist, it goes to a conference committee to iron out a bill that's exactly the same. 6, the final version is sent to the president for signing, possible veto, or other decisions.